Okay, so we're going to go over some quadratics review, solving quadratics review. So this is section 815 for us. And so what do we have to remember about factoring? Please remember that we are going to solve most factoring problems looking for a GCF first, and then trying to make sure that the problem's in standard form. Remember what standard form was? AX squared plus BX plus C. And then you have to remember, make sure to set the problem equal to 0 when you're solving a quadratic, especially if you're going to factor. It's the only one we don't set equal to 0. That's when we do our completeness square. But if we're going to factor, make sure the problem is set up in that format, ax squared plus bx plus c, standard form, which on the first one that we're looking at here definitely is. And so what do we need to do? We need to recognize our A, B, C's, right? What is our A? 1. What's our B? Please don't say 6. Please -6. And C is going to be -40. All right. So we have those as our ABCs. And we ask ourselves, what does that A mean? What does A equals 1 mean? Well, it means if A is equal to 1, we can do the diamond method. Okay, so we're going to do the diamond. Remember, A times C on the top, and the sum on the bottom, put the B in the bottom. So we're going to plug in at the top 1 times -40, and the B is going to be -6. And this is, again, where we would use our factor chart. Right, so we would go into our factor list. Where's our factor list? Let me pull up a factor list. All right, so I pulled up my factor chart, and what number do I want to go to? I want to go to 40, remember? Okay, so 40 is over here. So what am I thinking? What am I looking at again on this diamond? I was looking at -40 for the product, and the sum was -6, right? Yeah. Okay. So because it's negative, the product is negative on the top, we know that we're going to have mixed signs. One's positive, one's negative. So when I'm looking at my 4 factor pairs, right, I'm looking for, okay, if I take one of those numbers away from the other, how will I create the -6? So it's obviously not 1 minus 40 because that would be -39. It's not 2 minus 20 because that would be -18. It's definitely not 5 minus 8 because that would be -3. Right, so I was saying that pretty quick. If I subtracted those two, right, subtracted those two, -18, subtracted those two would be -39. So the only one that's going to make any sense to me is going to be 4 minus 10. So that means the positive's got to be a 4, the negative has to be the 10. So those were my factors. I'm going to go back to my problem now. What did I say, 815? All right. So I know I said +4 and -10. All right. And what do I do with those? I take those two factors and I put them into parentheses. So it's now going to be a product of factors, the quadratic, and set it equal to 0. And I'm going to just copy the sign down, +4, -10. Right? But this is, again, where we have to go, okay, what is the actual solution? Don't tell me it's +4. You want to look at that first set of parentheses and set that equal to the 0. And so your x value, when you solve that, when you take away the 4, is going to be x is equal to -4. All right, and on the other set of parentheses for the other factor, x minus 10 is equal to 0. When we add our 10 to both sides, we are going to get x is equal to 10. Yes, if you see the pattern, you literally just take for your answer the opposite signs there, right? Okay, so x was equal to -4 and 10. Box my answer, done. All right, number 2. All right, so I can do this one a little bit quicker. I'm going to just write in the a is 1, b is -14, c is 49. Because a is 1, I'm going to go right to the diamond. A times c, 1 times 49, positive 49, with a sum of -14. Again, I could go to my factor list, but I remember 49 is 7 times 7. So I'm thinking 7 and 7, but I got to be careful though. Why? Well, because what? The sum is negative. Oh, but the what? The c value is positive. So that means a negative times a negative makes that 49. Oh, okay. So this is going to be x minus 7 times x minus 7 equals 0. And so this means our parentheses are going to be exactly the same. X minus 7 set equal to 0. X minus 7 equals 0. So we only really need to solve one of these. What we're going to have is a repeating 0. And if you remember what that means in the what? In the quadratic graph, in the parabola, basically means right here at 7, this parabola would literally be touching only on the x-axis right there at the coordinate 7, 0. All right, and so my answer is x equals 7. I don't need to write it twice, right? But I do know it repeats. All right, we got a hang of this one. Okay, hopefully. Let's, number 3, right? Please do not fall for the trick and say A is 10, B is -25, and C is 1 or -1, right? That's an x squared. So the first thing we have to do is say, wait a minute, I need everything on the left side of the problem. 10x squared, that's the same thing as 1x squared. So I'm going to subtract 1x squared from both sides. So if I take away 1x squared from 10x squared, I'll be left with 9x squared minus 25 equals 0. Please do not tell me, though, the b is -25. Why? Well, because that doesn't have an x. What do you mean? Well, I mean, that's ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So the c is the -25. And this is a problem that if I was going to use diamond, -25, right, is the product. And wait a minute. I got to remember, that's a times c. Remember that? All right. So yeah, I got to remember that's going to be 9 times -25. Oh, okay. So that's going to be a lot bigger, right? That's going to be hmm, 4 times 25 would be 100, right? That would be 8. That'd be 100. Another 100, so that'd be 200. So this is going to be -225. And what's my b value? Well, it's 9x squared plus 0. X is -25. So my b is really 0. All right, so if I take the square root of -225, I'm going to get what? I think 15 and 15, right? But this is one of those problems where we would have to go and use Xbox factoring, right? But wait a minute, hold on. What's so special about 9? What's so special about 25? Oh, well, what's so special about them is, I have to remember, um, a squared minus b squared. Remember that? That's called the difference of squares. So I did all that work, but I don't really want to do Xbox here because I could just solve this by going, wait a minute, that's 3x squared. That's minus 5 squared. And these always factor to an a plus a b times an a minus a b. All right, so that means this is going to be 3x plus 5 times 3x minus 5 set equal to 0. All right, so if I solve these, I'm going to subtract 5, right? And that would give me 3x equals negative 5. I would divide by 3. And on the other one, I get 3x minus 5 set equal to 0. I'd add 5, and I get 3x equals 5 divided by 3. And I get 5/3 and negative 5/3. So my x's are plus or minus 5/3. All right. Now, feel free if you want to, pause, try on your own, and come back and see what I did. That'd be fine. I encourage that actually. Pause, check to see if you do it the way I do it. See if you get the same answer. All right. Okay, so I see only 2 terms here. So it is in standard form. And the only issue that I am now having with this problem is I don't see a C value there. So there's 2 terms. It's not going to be a difference of squares though. 1 second. All right, there we go. Notability locked up for just a second. All right, we're now back in business. All right, so 12x squared, 8x, 2 terms. Remember the first rule of factoring? Can we find a GCF? So 12 and 8, who's their biggest common factor? Is it 2? No, 2 is not the biggest. Is it 8? No, 8 doesn't go into 12, but it's what? 4. And what else goes into that? Oh, also an x. So this is going to factor to 4x times 3x. Why do I need an x there? To make the x squared. And then 4x times what is 8x plus 2 set equal to 0. Now, if I didn't know for sure, I could I could distribute the 4x times 3x and the 4x times 2 and make sure that I got back to 12x squared plus 8x, which I do. And now I see, okay, I can come up with 2 answers here. The screen recording is locking me up again. Let's see if I can go back in. No, I don't want to go to quadratic formula. I want to go to this one. Right. So there we go. All right. So the first equation that I'm going to solve is 4x equal to 0 divided by 4. Yes, you can divide a number into 0. You can't divide a number by 0. All right. So x is equal to 0. And then the other problem, 3x plus 2 set equal to 0. Subtract 2. So I know my answer is going to be negative now because 3x equals negative 2. We'll solve that by dividing by 3. X is equal to negative 2/3. All right, so my 2 answers are negative 2 divided by 3 and 0. Boom. Okay. All right. Taking a look at number 5. You can pause it if you need to. See how you would start it. All right. Now if you're watching through with me, okay, what am I going to do first? Well, just like problem number 3, I don't have everything on the same side. So I'm going to move the 26x by subtracting it. And I'm just writing it kind of in the middle because it's not taking away from anybody. And it's the only term with the single x to the first power. So that's going to be 2x squared minus 26x plus 80 equals 0. All right, now before I go and say, okay, I'm using Xbox factoring, look at all 3 terms. Do they have a common factor? They're all even. Do they all have x's? No. But they're all even, so I can factor out a 2. That's going to leave me with x squared minus what's half of 26? 13x. What's half of 80 plus 40 equals 0. Okay, so now when I'm factoring, I am factoring just inside the parentheses. I'm treating that like any quadratic equation. All right, so diamond 1 times 40 is 40. The sum is negative 13. I'm thinking 8 and 5. Wait, it's got to be negative, but the product is positive. They got to be double negatives then. So 8 and 5. And so I'm going to get 2 times x minus 8 and x minus 5 set equal to 0. Now I can solve those really easy. X minus 5 set equal to 0. So add 5 to both sides. X is equal to 5. And x minus 8 set equal to 0. Plus 8 plus 8. X is equal to 8. So my 2 answers are 5 and 8. All right. Okay. This next one, number 6. All right, so I'm recognizing my ABCs there are 4, 5, and 1. All right. So when I do the diamond, remember this is an A times a C, so this is going to be 4, not 1. All right, what's the sum? That's going to be 5. What 2 factors multiply to make a 4, but add up to make a 5? Positive 1 and positive 5. Please, 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 though, do not, what? Do not write down your answer as don't do this. Why? Because if you do that, right, and you distribute and FOIL this out, right, that's 4x squared plus what? 20x plus 1x plus what? 5. That's not 5x. So that cannot be our answer. That's not the way to go. What? Well, remember, what's your A? My A was 4. My A was not equal to 1. So I can't do diamond here. I got to use Xbox factoring. Right? We did our diamond. And what do we do with our diamond again? Okay. We take the 2 values that we use there and we plug them into the box. So I'm going to plug in 1x and 5x. What else goes in the box? Remember, I'm going to take the 4x squared and the 1. Where am I going to put them? Well, I'm going to put the 4x squared up the front, and I'm going to put the 1 down in the diagonal lower box, lower right-hand box. Okay. Remind myself that's a plus, that's a plus, that's a plus. Now it's my job to area map out the values on the sides. Okay. So first off, how can we create a 4x squared? Well, we can multiply by a 4 and a 1 or a 2 and a 2. I do notice though that we have a 1x there. So I'm really thinking that somehow this has got to be, right, a 1x, right? And maybe a 4x. But wait a minute. What's the problem there? Well, I can create what? The 1x there. Wait a minute. Why didn't you correct that error? What am I doing? 1 times 5. Goodness gracious. Big mistake. If you caught that, awesome for you. That should be a 4. That should be a 4x. And then it makes a lot more sense. Why? Okay. So 4x times what is 4x? Plus 1. So at 1x plus 1. Okay, okay. All right. And then this one has got to be what? 4x. 1x times what is 1x? 1. Plus 1? Yeah. Because then 1 times 1 is 1. 1x times 1x is 1x. 4x times 1x is 4x squared. 4x times 1 is 4x. All the boxes check out. Okay. So now we've got x plus 1 times 4x plus 1 set equal to 0. I'm sorry about that mistake. What time is it here? 9:41, so it's a little late. My mind is not as sharp as it should be. I'm going to write that up. Let's see why. I was a little slow there. All right, x plus 1 set equal to 0. For x plus 1 set equal to 0, subtract by 1, subtract by 1. We get our 4x equals negative 1, divide by 4. 4x equals negative 1/4. Okay, one answer. And then the other one, oh, just x equals negative 1. So our two answers are negative 1 and negative 1/4. Okay.